and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today I have a fabulous topic for you, and that is romance with God. All of us love a good love story. We want to find the love of our life, the one true love, our eternal soulmate. Why do we all have this longing? Why are we suckers for this idea? And why do we never find the fulfillment of our desire? I mean, it's one thing to want something, but when you find that the probability of getting it is so small, and yet we keep chasing it. We may find someone, we may love them with all our heart, we may be committed and faithful and vow to love them till death do us part. But the reality is that more than 50% of such romances turn to hate and divorce. The remaining learn to tolerate and adjust to each other. Love turns into practicality, and romance often turns into raising a family. There are a few exceptions, of course, but you wouldn't invest your life, your hard-earned resources, and all your energy in something that had a 5 to 10% chance of success. That is why so many people are now turning away from sex, romance, and love. But what's the alternative? I once heard a story. It was when I was a child, and it was from Aesop's Fables. It's about a wolf that finds a tree with grapes, and he tries to get the grapes. The grapes are really high on the tree, and he can't reach them. So ultimately he gives up, saying, the grapes were sour. We're like that wolf. We want love, but when love disappoints us, we either become bitter and close our heart, or we keep thinking that this time I'll succeed, and then that fails, and then this time I'll succeed. Things do get better, but it's never like it was in the beginning, either of the relationship or in the beginning when we began to dream of this idea. Perhaps behind our longing is something much deeper. Perhaps there is a longing behind the longing. To explore that, I'd like to ask you, did you know that God is a lover, the greatest lover, and wants to have a love affair with all of us? What if the one true love that all of us seek is God? Not some old man in the sky, but a beautiful, adorable, exciting, fun-loving, humorous being. What if our soul has been longing for this greatest love of all, the love of God? It's talked about everywhere, but no one's shown us how to do it. And we've been looking in all the wrong places for love. What if this divine love is what will fulfill our desire for love the way no human or animal can? Once we have found our eternal beloved, perhaps then we won't need to put so much pressure on our human partners, who, like us, are flawed and imperfect. Perhaps then we can create with our partners a spiritual partnership, in which both of us can love and serve God. When we make God the center of our life, then our love for each other grows because we no longer have unrealistic expectations from each other. To learn more about romance with God, join us as we hear about the pastimes of Krishna and his ultimate lovers, the gopis. So in the previous episodes, we talked about the different ways of loving God. These were referred to in the Sanskrit language as rasas, the 5 rasas. So explore that, we'll see they are known as Shanta, or love in adoration, Dasya, love in service, parental love, love in friendship, and romantic love. These are some of the possibilities. that all of us seek. Loving God as a parent, loving God as a friend, and loving God as our beloved. So, what makes all of this so intriguing is these longings exist within all of us. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist. It doesn't matter whether you believe or don't believe. The longings are there in us, and the longings are telling us about something that we yearn for at the deepest level, just as we yearn for happiness, just as we yearn for peace, just as we yearn for abundance, just as we yearn for to live forever. We yearn for these things, and yet we don't have the fulfillment of them. In the same way, we yearn for love, and we yearn for different kinds of love. We yearn for the love of friends, the love of parents, the love of those who are our lovers or husband or wife or whatever the relationship of that intimate nature might be. So to understand this further, I'd like to transport you to another time, another place, right here on planet Earth, around about 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, in a place called Vrindavan, India. And I'd like you to consider the Vrindavan forest was filled with transparent autumnal waters and cooled by breezes, perfumed with the fragrance of lotus flowers growing in the clear lakes. The lakes, rivers, and hills of Vrindavan resounded with the sounds of maddened bees and flocks of birds moving about the flowering trees. In this wonderful setting, the infallible Sri Krishna, accompanied by his brother Balaram and their friends, entered the forest while herding the cows. Krishna began to play on his flute. When the young girls in the village of Vrindavan or Braj heard the song of his flute, which arouses the influence of Cupid, some of them privately began describing Krishna's qualities and activities to their girlfriends. In this, there is a word used, iti, in Sanskrit, which indicates that after becoming speechless by remembering Krishna, the gopis, or the cowherd damsels, the girls in Vrindavan, they regained their composure and were able to ecstatically describe the sound of his flute. As a few gopis began to exclaim, the others realized that they shared the same ecstatic love within their hearts. All of them began embracing one another, overwhelmed with conjugal love for the young Krishna. So, we've heard it said in almost all the scriptures of the world that all of us have a loving relationship with God. But when they tell us about, they just don't tell us what that's going to look like. They don't tell us what God looks like. They don't tell us what God does. And they certainly don't tell us how we can fall in love. If I'd never heard about somebody, if I didn't know what this person does or what they look like, how could I possibly fall in love with them? It would be ridiculous. It would be impossible. Of course, some have the idea that God is great and needs to be worshipped and is on a throne and needs to be an ideal person, and all these things are good and true. And that is why the same divine being who now has incarnated as Krishna appeared at an earlier time as Ram to show us what that ideal person would be. Now he's coming as Krishna to go beyond the rules, to go beyond all the dharma, because he's teaching us in the Gita that give up all your dharma and surrender unto me. Not give up your dharma just for the sake of giving up dharma and then just become an atheist or become irreligious or become someone who is just doing their own thing, eat, drink, and be merry. That's not the idea. What Krishna is talking about is give up. He says this at the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Give up all your dharma, sarva dharma, parityaja, mam ekam sharanam vraja. Just surrender unto me. He's not saying surrender unto the principle of me or the divine, some cosmic energy. He's talking about mam ekam sharanam vraja. Just to me alone, surrender unto me. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. I will release you from all karma, bad karma, sinful reactions. Moksha ishamima shuchaha. And I will give you liberation. Liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Liberation from your mind and body. Liberation from suffering. That's what he's saying. But it's not just liberation. It doesn't stop there. There's many who want to just be liberated and merge into the light, become one with the universe. But hey, what happens then? Once you've merged with the light, what happens to you? Oh no, we want to shed the personality. Is it possible to shed the egoic personality, but to maintain the beauty and uniqueness of who you are? Because after all, your real uniqueness is not in your personality and in your mind. That's a good thing you have, an interesting thing you have, but it's got many, many flaws to it. The more powerful thing is the uniqueness of your soul. Oh no, but people say, well, we're all one. Yes, you're one, but you're also different. You're one and different simultaneously. After all, we all seek different things. We all desire different things. So how can we be the same? We're not. And at the same time, at the core, we are. So we are and we're not. If that's hard to understand, well, bear with it. We shall try to go further to explore that. Now, it's interesting that they're talking about Cupid. The power of Cupid, it says here, disturbed their minds, and thus the gopis could not speak. See, Cupid is a very interesting phenomenon. He exists in the West. You've heard of Cupid. But he exists also in the ancient Vedic times. We've got many references to Cupid. And right here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're hearing about Cupid. And he's firing his arrows. And there's a whole bunch of stories about how he fired an arrow on Shiva. Shiva was in meditation. Shiva got very angry with him and literally killed him, burned him to ashes. It's a long story. I don't think I'm going to get into it today, but eventually Cupid was revived and continued to do his work, but not with the physical body anymore. Again, that's another story for another time. But I'm trying to compare the idea of the Western concept of Cupid, which is actually very similar. If you look at this, and then look at this, essentially the same thing, the same arrow, the same things of love, but thousands of years before the West even began to conceive of these ideas. So it is with everything. So we find that all these concepts were there thousands of years before. So now we're coming across the gopis, who are the girls of Vrindavan. We've heard about how the boys of Vrindavan interacted with Krishna and what kind of relationship they had with him. But now we're going to hear about the girls of Vrindavan and how they loved him. The point that a lot of people don't understand is, oh, but he had so many girlfriends, and how's that okay? Well, the reality is, if you're God, if you start with that premise that he's the supreme being, God, then everyone loves God. And if you're in a land where everybody is a lover of God, Vrindavan, then how is everyone going to love him? And without him having multiple mothers and multiple fathers and multiple friends and multiple girlfriends, that's going to all be, everybody is going to love him in some way or other. Right? When he's charming and adorable and beautiful, what else is going to happen? Look at the pictures and you see for yourself. This is the most attractive being. The very word Krishna comes from akarshit. Akarshit means the one who attracts everyone. And why does he attract everyone? Because of his incredible beauty. because of his incredible wisdom, because of his incredible strength, because he possesses everything, because he knows everything. But for the people of Vrindavan, it's not because of all that. It's just because he's so absolutely adorable. So it says, wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and a garland of forest flowers, Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. When the young ladies in Vrindavan, Braja, that's another name for Vrindavan, when they heard the sound of Krishna's flute, which captivates the minds of all living beings, they all embraced one another and began describing it. So, ultimately, there's two ways to meditate. See, this is how the gopis were meditating. They were thinking of him, remembering him, being captivated by him. The ways to meditate are, we can either sit in meditation and we can try to train our mind. And yes, it is very possible, but it is also very difficult. And the other is to become captivated and in love. You know how it is when you fall in love with someone. You can't think of anyone but that person. When you fall in love, meditation is natural, meditation on the beloved. And that is exactly the path of bhakti, or the path of devotion, is that it brings about a natural meditation. Of course, our minds are going to tend to want to go on to all the worldly things. That is natural, and we have to bring it back. But the process becomes a lot easier when there is something to focus our energy on. And we're trying to focus on the cosmic divinity, the energy of the universe. Well, it's very difficult to meditate like that. But when you have an object of devotion, you have an object of love, someone who you can focus your energy on, someone who is all attractive, then that love comes very naturally. So, at this point we hear about how Krishna and his brother, Balaram, were being described by the gopis. The gopis said, "Oh friends, these eyes that see the beautiful faces of the sons of King Nanda, Krishna and Balaram, are certainly fortunate." So Nanda is their father, and Krishna and Balaram are the sons. Balaram is the older brother of Krishna. So they're saying, these eyes that see the beautiful faces of Krishna and Balaram are certainly fortunate. As they enter the forest surrounded by their friends and cows, they hold their flutes to their mouths and glance lovingly upon us, the residents of Vrindavan. For those who have eyes, we think that there is no greater object of vision. The gopis were aware that their mothers or elderly persons might hear their romantic words and disapprove. Thus, they put it in a very general context. To see Krishna, they said, is the goal for all persons, not simply ourselves. In other words, the gopis indicated that since Krishna is the supreme object of love for everyone, why couldn't they also love him in a spiritual ecstasy? Because that's what it actually is. You know, when this kind of love is actually highly spiritual. What is the difference between mundane love and spiritual love? It's a topic I will definitely take up, between what is called prem and what is called kam. Prem is divine love. Kam is lust or desire. Prem is usually unselfish. It wants only the happiness of the beloved. Kam, on the other hand, is what's in it for me. If I'm not getting now my needs met, then I'm going to move on to somebody else. If I'm not getting my expectations fulfilled, then why am I here? You know, I'll find someone else. There's plenty of fish in the sea, as they say. But that's not prem. That is lust. That is me wanting something for my selfish needs and desires. And you say, what's wrong with having selfish needs and desires? By all means, have them. No one's saying don't. But the more we indulge those, the more we end up coming back empty-handed. And no matter, you can eat all you want, but how long can you eat? You can drink all you want. How much can you drink? You can lust for someone as much as you want, but how much can you enjoy? After all, it takes a few minutes, a few hours at best, and then it's over. You're not even satisfied. You're always wanting more and more and more. But what they're describing here, prem, there's complete satisfaction. Yes, they want more, but there is a complete satisfaction. They have achieved and attained the greatest love of all. The greatest love of all is not learning to love yourself. No. Yourself is lovable because it is a tiny part of God. It is anksha. Anksha means a tiny part, an infinitesimal fragment of God. And yes, in loving yourself, you're beginning that experience of loving God. You're beginning to taste what it feels like to connect with a higher energy than the mind, body, ego. You're learning what it is to experience that higher taste of love. But you're just beginning with the taste, just a little tiny drop. That's what lies within us. Then you can experience it in another, and you can love them with that high quality of unconditional love. But again, it will be only a taste. If you want the full, complete fountainhead of love, if you want the source of love, well, that's what we're talking about out here. And the gopis had achieved that, attained that. Many of them were great sages and rishis in their previous lifetimes. Many of them had wanted to have this intimate relationship with the divine and therefore had taken birth as the young girls of Vrindavan, as gopis. The descriptions continue. Dressed in a charming variety of garments upon which their garlands rest, and decorating themselves with peacock flowers, peacock feathers, lotuses, lilies, and newly grown mango sprouts, the young cowherd boys look like the best of dancers appearing on a dramatic stage. So the arrows of Cupid being fired at the gopis. They look like the best of dancers appearing in a dramatic stage, and sometimes they would sing. There are times when Krishna danced on Kaliya, as we heard about earlier, and the big serpent that came to kill him and all the people in Vrindavan. And he danced on his hoods and completely overpowered this great serpent. And there were times when Krishna danced as a baby, dancing along with the monkeys even. And there were times he danced when the rain came, and there were times he danced again and again. He would come to the homes of the gopis and he would dance there just to get a little bit of butter from them. And they knew that he would dance for them. Here is the divine, greatest being of all, the creator of everything, dancing, singing, playing his flute, being funny, being mischievous, doing all the things that we enjoy. Krishna then says, my dear gopis, No, the gopis actually say this to each other. They say, what auspicious activities must the flute of Krishna have performed to enjoy the nectar of his lips? See, the flute is always on his lips, is always with him. But they're not always with him. They cannot be with him all the time. But the flute, he plays it all whenever he gets a moment. Right? So say, what auspicious activities must the flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Krishna's lips and leave only a taste, a little tiny bit for us gopis, for whom that nectar is actually meant. So we should be always able to kiss him, but it's the flute, so they're feeling envious of the flute. The forefathers of the flute, the bamboo trees, shed tears of pleasure. His mother, the river, whose bank the bamboo was born. Right? Krishna playing his flute all the time. And then there's the river with the bamboo growing on the side of it. His mother, the river on whose bank the bamboo was born, feels jubilation, and therefore her blooming lotus flowers are standing like hair on her body. Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Leela writes, in the guise of releasing flowing sap, the bamboo trees are actually crying tears of ecstasy upon seeing their child, the flute, become an exalted devotee of the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna. So many beautiful descriptions here. Then the gopis continue. They say, "O friend, Vrindavan is spreading the glory of the earth, having obtained the treasure of the lotus feet of Krishna." Srila Sridhar Goswami says that because such activities as those described in this verse do not occur in any other world, the earth is unique. In fact, the earth's glories are being spread by the wonderful town of Vrindavan, which is the place of Krishna's pastimes. The peacocks dance madly when they hear his flute. That's how the peacocks dance. And when other creatures see them from the hilltops, they all become stunned. Blessed are all these foolish deer, because they have approached Krishna, who is gorgeously dressed and is playing on his flute. Indeed, both the doe and the bucks worship him with love and devotion. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, in Vrindavan the peacocks request Krishna, "Govinda, please make us dance." Thus Krishna plays his flute and they surround him in a circle of dance, in time with the rhythm of his melody. And while standing in the midst of their dancing, he also sings and dances. Then those peacocks who are fully satisfied with his musical performance out of gratitude offer for his pleasure their own divine feathers. In this unusual manner of musical performance, Krishna gladly accepts their presentations of flowers and places a feather upon the turban atop his head. Gentle animals such as deer and doves greatly relish the transcendental entertainment presented by Krishna. To get a good view, they flock to the peak of hills. Then as they watch the breathtaking program, they become stunned in ecstasy. Krishna's beauty and character create a festival for all women. These are the gopis talking now. Indeed, when the demigods' wives flying in airplanes with their husbands catch sight of him and hear his resonant flute song, their hearts are shaken by Cupid, and they become so bewildered that their flowers fall out of their hair and their belts loosen. Using their upraised ears as vessels, the cows are drinking the nectar of the flute song flowing out of Krishna's mouth. The calves, their mouths full of milk from their mother's moist nipples, stand still as they take Govinda within themselves through their tear-filled eyes and embrace him with their hearts. O mother, in this forest all the birds have risen unto the beautiful branches of the trees to see Krishna. With closed eyes, they are simply listening in silence to the sweet vibrations of his flute. They are not attracted by any other sound. Surely those birds are on the same level as great sages. They're all listening to the flute of Krishna, bewildered, amazed. When the rivers hear the flute song of Krishna, their minds begin to desire him. See, the gopis are seeing everything and everyone as being in love with Krishna. This is because of their love. When we have love in our hearts, we feel love for everything and everyone. We feel love everywhere. That is the nature of divine love. But when we have in our heart the desire to own, to manipulate, to control, then our love is never pure. Our love is never genuine. It is conditional. It is full of expectations and needs. But in divine love, there is no such thing. So when the rivers hear the flute song of Krishna, their minds begin to desire him. And thus the flow of their currents is strong. And their waters are agitated, moving around in whirlpools. Then with arms of their waves, the rivers embrace his lotus feet, and holding on to them, present offerings of lotus flowers. In the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds the cows even under the blazing heat of the summer sun. Seeing this, the clouds in the sky have expanded themselves out of love. They are rising high and constructing out of themselves, with its multitude of flower-like droplets of water, an umbrella for the sake of their friend. The truth is, all of nature, all of life, is in love with him. And that is the point of it, becoming, if you look for what is the highest energy in the universe, what is the highest longing that all of us have, what is the greatest desire, it is love. And what is the highest form of love? Because you may say, I love my family, I love my wife, I love my husband, I love my children. Yes, these are wonderful things. But this is in this life. In this life, we have this person that we love. Then we die and we move on. And then at that point, we don't know where we go. Let's say that we do take birth again. Maybe as a human. Not necessary, but maybe as a human. And if we do come back as a human, there'll be another family. There'll be another wife, another husband, another lover. And it will go on and on and on like this. Eventually, you have to ask yourself, which one of these was mine? Which was, if you look at it over a matter of eternal time, you've had thousands of lovers, thousands of husbands, thousands of wives. You've been a man, you've been a woman, you've been all kinds of things. Which one of these was yours? The houses you bought, where are they now? The ones you bought in your previous life. The ones you bought in this life will be lost again, and you will move on. And you will take none of it with you. What you will take with you, what will be your eternal wealth, is your spiritual growth. Whatever progress you've made spiritually, that will be your eternal wealth. And that will be your eternal relationship, the relationship that you formed with the divine, with God. That relationship, that wisdom, that growth which you made spiritually, that will go with you forever. That will never be lost. How can I say it with so much confidence? Because I've seen it again and again. Everybody starts from a different place in their life. Some people already know, even as children they know, and they're already seeking. Sometimes they're already born into the homes of families which are already devotees of God, lovers of God. And then they immediately take up to this path. Others were born in families that aren't necessarily connected with God. They become seekers. They want to know, they want to find answers. And yes, very often we get misled, and very often we get sidetracked. The whole world is set up to distract us, to sidetrack us, to entertain us, to amuse us, to distract us, to take us away from this seeking. But it is this that gives us our ultimate goal in life. This is the ultimate reason we are here. We were given the choice to hate God or love God, to accept or to reject. Love cannot be forced upon anyone. Love needs choice. And so we were put here, given the choice of everything. You can have anything and everything in this world. You can drive fancy cars, drive in fabulous airplanes, have beautiful homes, have sex with all kinds of people. But ultimately, when you find yourself empty-handed, when you find yourself feeling unfulfilled, that's when you start to make the choice to turn towards spirituality. And when you come to spirituality, as you keep seeking and growing, you ultimately come back to God. You may reject God in the early stages. You may think, I don't want to deal with something like that. But there is nothing that will keep us from that. Ultimately, we will land up exactly in this place. So it continues. The women of the Vrindavan area become disturbed by love when they see the grass marked with the reddish kumkum powder, endowed with the color of Krishna's lotus feet. The powder originally decorated the breasts of his beloveds, and when the women smear it on their faces and breasts, they feel fully satisfied to give up their anxiety. So this is Krishna's lotus feet, and that's the color, the reddish kumkum powder that is there. For those of you that are not familiar with kumkum powder, then all right, here's a little idea of what that looks like. So it's what people will put with as a bindi on their forehead or in the parting in their head. Of all the devotees, Govardhan Hill is the best. This is again the gopis talking. What is Govardhan Hill? It is this wonderful place in Vrindavan where Krishna would take his cows to graze. In a later pastime, we will hear about how Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill on his little pinky finger for 7 days. You say, oh, that's impossible. Yeah, well, this is Govardhan Hill at present time. So of all the devotees, this Govardhan Hill is the best. Oh, my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram, along with their calves, cows, and cowherd friends, with all kinds of necessities, water for drinking, soft grasses, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respects to Krishna. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhan Hill appears very jubilant. So now, they're talking about Krishna and Balaram as they pass through the forest with their cowherd friends, leading their cows. They carry ropes that bind the cow's rear legs at the time of milking. When Krishna plays on his flute, the sweet music causes the moving, living entities to become stunned and the non-moving trees to tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful. Thus narrating to one another the playful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he wandered about in the Vrindavan forest, the gopis became fully absorbed in thoughts of him. Srila Prabhupada comments, this is the perfect example of Krishna consciousness, to somehow or other always remain engrossed in thoughts of Krishna. See, this is natural meditation. When you talk about his pastimes, when you talk about his Leela, you become immediately captivated. Your mind becomes still, it becomes focused, and you feel blissful. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that there is no better method of worship than the way the gopis worshipped him. They were not born in very high families of Brahmins or Kshatriyas. They were born in the families of business people, Vaishyas. And they were not very knowledgeable, not very educated. At the same time, they were the greatest and the highest and the most dear devotees of Krishna, because their only purpose was to remain always absorbed in thoughts of him. Now we come to the next part. And the next part of this is in the winter seasons. Earlier we were in the summer season, now we come to the winter season, and we're going deeper into the pastimes of the gopis. The gopis are the young unmarried girls of Vrindavan. And there was a time where they were observing the vow of worshipping goddess Katyayani, Durga. For 1 entire month, they ate only unspiced khichdi. Khichdi is rice and dal. Dal is a lentil, cooked together, making it very soft. So all they ate for 1 entire month was just that, khichdi. After they bathed in the water of the Yamuna, just as the sun was rising, the gopis made an earthen deity of goddess Durga on the riverbank. Then they worshipped her with such aromatic substances as sandalwood pulp, along with items both opulent and simple, including lamps, fruits, betel nuts, newly grown leaves, and fragrant garlands and incense. So they were continuing to worship Durga. With all kinds of beautiful offerings. Each of the young unmarried girls performed her worship while chanting the following mantra: O goddess Katyayani, O Shakti, great potency of the Lord, O possessor of great mystic power and mighty controller of all, please make the son of Nanda, that is Krishna, my husband. Each of them is praying, make Krishna my husband. I offer my obeisances unto you. So for an entire month they carried out this vow and properly worshipped Goddess Bhadrakali, fully absorbing their minds in Krishna and meditating upon the following thought: may the son of King Nanda, Krishna, become my husband. Each day they rose at dawn, calling out to one another by name. They all held hands and loudly sang the glories of Krishna while going to the Kalindi Ghat to take their bath. Now in the purport, Prabhupada writes, generally people worship the goddess Durga for some material benediction. Here, the gopis prayed to the goddess to become wives of Krishna. If Krishna is the center of activity, a devotee can adopt any means to achieve that goal. The gopis could adopt any means to satisfy or serve Krishna. That was the super excellent characteristic of the gopis. They worshipped goddess Durga completely for 1 month in order to have Krishna as their husband. The conclusion is very simple, that instead of worshipping Durga for material things, they were worshipping Durga for Krishna. And because Durga is Param Bhakt, the supreme devotee of Krishna, along with Shiva, Shiva is in one sense no different than Vishnu, and yet at the same time is the greatest devotee of Vishnu. They are no different, and yet they are devoted to each other. You will see this in the pastimes of Ram, where Shiva is worshipping Vishnu and Vishnu is worshipping Shiva. That is to say, Vishnu in the form of Ram is worshipping Shiva. So these are wonderful pastimes in Leela. One day, they came to the riverbank and putting aside their clothing as they had done before, they happily played in the water while singing the glories of Krishna. Krishna, the supreme Godhead and master of all masters of mystic yoga, was aware that what the gopis were doing, and thus he went there, surrounded by his young friends, to award the gopis the perfection of their endeavor. So keep in mind, what they've been praying for was to have Krishna as their husband. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada comments, it is an old system among Indian girls and women that when they take a bath in the river, they place their garments on the bank and dip into the water completely naked. The portion of the river where the girls and women bathe is strictly prohibited to any male, and this is still the system. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing the minds of the young unmarried gopis, awarded them their desired objective. They had prayed for Krishna to become their husband, and Krishna wanted to fulfill their desire. Now, taking the girls' garments, he quickly climbed to the top of a kadamba tree. And then he laughed loudly, and his friends also laughed. He addressed the girls jokingly. My dear girls, you may each come here as you wish to take back your garments. I'm telling you the truth, and I'm not joking with you. Since I see you're fatigued from executing austere vows, I'm not speaking a lie, and these boys know it. Therefore, O slender-waisted girls, please come forward, either one by one or all together, and pick out your clothes. Seeing how Krishna was apparently joking with them, the gopis became fully immersed in love for him, and as they glanced at each other, they began to laugh and joke among themselves, even in their embarrassment. But still, they did not come out of the water. As Krishna spoke to the gopis in this way, his joking words completely captivated their minds. Submerged up to their necks in cold water, they began to shiver. The gopis said, Dear Krishna, don't be unfair. We know that you are the respectable son of Nanda, and you are honored by everyone in Vrindavan. You are also very dear to us. Please give us back our clothes. We are shivering in the cold water. O Shyam Sundar, we are your maidservants and will do whatever you say. But give us back our clothing. We know what religious principles are, and if you don't give us our clothes, we will have to tell the king Please. The Supreme Godhead, Krishna, said, if you girls are actually my maidservants and if you will really do what I say, then come here with your innocent smiles and let each girl pick out her clothes. If you don't do what I say, I won't give them back to you, and even if the king becomes angry, what can he do? Then, shivering from the painful cold, all the young girls rose up out of the water, covering their private parts with their hands. When the gopis saw Krishna's determination, they were filled with loving ecstasy. Although embarrassed, they were overjoyed to receive such attention from him. He was joking with them as if they were his wives or girlfriends, and the gopis' only desire was to achieve such a relationship with him. In the purport, it is written, the gopis' simple presentation was so pure that Krishna immediately became pleased with them. A woman in Vedic culture cannot be naked before any male except her husband. The unmarried gopis desired Krishna as their husband, and he fulfilled their desire in this way. For aristocratic girls like the gopis, standing naked before a young boy was worse than death, and yet they decided to give up everything for the pleasure of Krishna. He wanted to see the power of their love for him and was completely satisfied for their unalloyed devotion. Krishna is completely transcendental, and there is not a trace of material desire in his mind. Krishna is the ocean of transcendental bliss, and he wanted to share his bliss with the gopis on the spiritual platform, completely free of ordinary lust. See, the tragedy is most of us will view this or try to understand it with our own lust-filled minds. And that is the tragedy. We will not be able to understand how this can be so. But you need to be able to step out of your mind and into the mind of God. And to understand that for the gopis, this was the ultimate surrender. This surrender of being able to submit all rules of society, all convention, all that was right and wrong for their beloved Krishna. Now, if Krishna was not the Supreme Being, I would say this was a very horrible act. But because he is who he is, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachit Ananda Vigraha, he is Ishvara, the Supreme Being. Ishvara Parami, he is actually Param Ishwar, the greatest of controllers, Param Ishwar. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachit Ananda Vigraha, and the form that he has is Sachit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. That Supreme Being incarnated into this world in a spiritual form to show us what love of God looks like. And here when we see these various pastimes with his parents that we were looking at earlier, then with his friends, the Gopas, as we were seeing earlier, and all their pastimes, and now we're seeing the intimate affairs that he had with the gopis. Please, for heaven's sake, do not equate them with your earthly, lusty desires. Do not try to equate them to yourself and the anarthas, the impurities in your mind. Do not do that, because to do so will be to ruin your own spiritual path and your own spiritual progress. Please try to understand with an open mind the beauty of the relationship between God and the beloved. When the Supreme Lord saw how the gopis were struck with embarrassment, he was satisfied by their pure loving affection. Putting their clothes on his shoulder, he smiled and spoke to them with affection. Krishna said, "You girls bathe naked while executing your vow, and that is certainly an offense against Varun Dev, the demigod. To counteract your sin, you should offer obeisances while placing your joined palms above your heads. Then you should take back your garments." The gopis accepted that they had broken their vow by bathing naked in the river, but they still desired to successfully complete their vow. And since Krishna is himself the ultimate result of all pious activities, they offered their obeisances to him to cleanse away all their sins. Seeing them bow like that, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave them back their garments, feeling compassionate toward them and satisfied by their act. Although the gopis had been thoroughly cheated, deprived of their modesty, ridiculed, and made to act like toy dolls And although their clothing had been stolen, they did not feel at all inimical toward Krishna. Rather, they were simply joyful to have this opportunity to associate with their beloved. The gopis were addicted to their beloved Krishna and became increasingly captivated by him. Even after putting on their clothes, they did not move. They simply remained where they were, shyly glancing at him. Krishna understood the determination of the gopis in executing their strict vow. He also knew that the girls desired to touch his lotus feet. He said, "O saintly girls, I understand that your real motive in this austerity has been to worship me. That intent of yours is approved by me, and indeed it must come to pass. The desire of those who fix their minds on me does not lead to material desire for sense gratification. Go now and return to Vrindavan. Your desire is fulfilled, for in my company you will enjoy the coming nights." There's going to be a lot more unfolding. After all, this was the purpose of your vow and the reason that you worship Goddess Katyayani. O pure-hearted ones, the young girls, their desire now fulfilled, with great difficulty returned to the village, meditating all the while upon Krishna's lotus feet. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the greatest offense is to imitate the activities of Sri Krishna. In India, there is a group called Prakrita Sahajyas, who imitate these affairs of Krishna and try to enjoy naked young girls in the name of worshipping Krishna. We sternly reject this mockery of religion, because the greatest offense is for human beings to ludicrously imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are no cheap incarnations, and it is not possible to promote oneself to the position of Krishna. So with that, we're going to end for today, and I'd love to take up your questions. If you have any questions, please write them down in the chat. And I'm going to stay on for a few minutes to see if what your thoughts are, what you felt, what you understood. Your doubts are all welcome. Please do not hesitate to write. Put them in the chat, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on Zoom, or whether you're on YouTube. Wherever you're coming in from, please write down your questions, and I would be happy to answer you right now. Or if you catch this at a later date, then write down your questions in the comments, and I'll be glad to answer them there as well. We're here every week on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern time, and in India at 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday. All right, still waiting for your questions. If you have any questions, please write them down. I'd love to know what you thought. Many people fail to understand these pastimes. They are very intimate. They are very secret. Literally, one should hear the entire Bhagavatam before coming to this part. We've been doing almost 90 episodes by now. I'm not sure of the exact number, but somewhere around 90. And we've had to do that 90 hours of reading various parts of the Bhagavatam to come to this point. It is only when you fully understand the deeper intricacies of what God is and what these pastimes are that you can fully appreciate what is being said here. The idea is to really not misconstrue and to be able to understand the deeper significance of what is being stated. So I'm still waiting for your questions. If you have any, please write them down. Okay. Anybody at all? You can just type down your questions. For many of you, you may never have heard of this kind of vision of God. You may have never heard of such a possibility. The only thing you may have heard was about how God is somewhere in the clouds, or someone who is great, or someone who sits on a throne. But here we see God as real. Someone who loves and loves passionately. And we see how the devotees love God. The gopis, the young girls of Vrindavan, the young boys of Vrindavan, the parents of Vrindavan. We see how they love God. And then we begin to understand that, oh, I too can have such a relationship with God. I too can have a romance with God. I too can have a friendship with God. God doesn't just have to be my parent. God can be my child. Imagine the intensity of love you have for your child, or the intensity of love you have for your friend, or the intensity of love you have for your lover. The gopis are unmarried to Krishna, and their love becomes considered the greatest of all, because they took all the risks to go against the rules of society, to go against all the conventions, to break all the norms just for his love. That's why it's called the greatest love of all. All right, any questions at all? If not, then let's end right here. I'll be back next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, and if you're in India, 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday. All right, see you next week. Take care. Have a wonderful week.